So the subject for today is the subject of great leaders. And this is going to be the first of our new workshops that we're going to do in 2024, Deirdre and I. This is one of my favorites by Einstein. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing it is stupid. And yeah, I love this because there's nothing wrong with a fish, and it may be an outstanding fish, and it may be a superb fish, a whale, a dolphin, but can't climb a tree. That's the idea of fit. That is the definition of fit. And we're going to talk about fit as the primary topic for today. It's what I call the one word of the day. And those of you that have studied literature, and I know we have at least one because Deirdre did, but Hemingway had there was a whole concept about the Hemingway one sentence. And it's not necessarily Hemingway's invention, but if you ever are curious about this, he said, if you ever want to write something, but you don't know what you want to write, or you want to tell a story about something you don't know what to just write one sentence on something you know very, very well. Because that one sentence that you write will then cause you to be able to write whatever you need to write. And this was more about creative writing. But the concept of one sentence and one word are really powerful. And his was the concept. And like I said, his famous one is a phrase I won't bore you with, but it's worth looking up on, and you can get it quickly on Wikipedia. But the question really here for us today is, what makes a great leader, and how do you evaluate a leader? So the step of going for what makes a great leader, there's plenty of things that we know that we run across and we see, and plenty of books written on this, but it's very difficult to then translate that into how do you actually evaluate a leader? And we'll show you some examples or we'll tell you some examples of this as Deirdre and I proceed through here today. And then lastly, to say to yourself, are you a great leader? What does it take? And then ultimately, do you fit the situation you're in, or do you not? And so as we go through this, Deirdre and I will make reference, and we're going to actually evaluate two people. I will assure you it's nobody on our mailing list. It's nobody that comes to these events. It's nobody directly connected to what we do. Now, because you're going to be looking there and saying, oh man, this partially, does this fit somebody I know? It's not anybody that you're likely to know, but we will take you through this. Here are people in our past that we are evaluating. But it will give you a concept of how do you actually take something like this that seems fairly broad, and how do you quickly be able to say, does this person fit this situation or not? And again, you can be a great leader, but not fit the situation you're in. And we'll spend more time on fit in a future workshop to go deeply with your help on the concept of fit. But I know Deirdre and I, and almost all of you that I know well, you've been in situations where you don't fit. And it's a very uncomfortable, and it does, if you're not careful and you can't articulate why you don't fit, it can really hurt your confidence. It can damage your confidence, and then damage your confidence about your expertise and abilities. And that's the one thing if we do anything, it's to dispel the difference between you're fitting a situation and how well you do something. So those are, and that's such a tricky situation. And again, I understand the realities. We understand the realities of this, that if you're very fortunate, and this gets into something we'll talk about in a second, but if you're really fortunate, and Deirdre and I are very fortunate, and some of you are fortunate, that you can actually say, I don't fit this situation, so I'm going to make a change. But many of us are not that fortunate, especially younger in your career, You don't always have that option. And sometimes you haven't been lucky enough as you progress through your career to have that option. And so then it becomes a question of how do you manage the situation, recognizing you don't fit. I don't think I have any solutions for that, but hopefully you all will help us with that. So we're going to begin a monthly process. We'll stay with the process that we used, which was middle of the month, although we had to change the first two to be the weekend after the middle of the month because of holidays. MLK and President's weekend was last weekend. And those of you that are Irish, or those of you that become Irish on St. Patrick's Day, are going to say, wait a minute, what about March 17th? Well, hopefully we'll catch you early enough on March 17th that you can enjoy the Irish part of your heritage, whether it's adopted or real, later. And those of you that know me know that that's something I haven't had the privilege of being able to do, being Scottish by nature. So with that, before we get into these, and we'll go through these, but before we do, I want to ask Deirdre to address the elephant in the room. So you all know both of us pretty well. So the question is, why are we not teaching at Columbia right now? And so I thought Deirdre could take a moment and she could just explain to you why the two of us have decided to take a leave step away from Columbia for a bit. So Deirdre, I'll turn it over to you.
Right. This is actually something fairly routine at Columbia. About every 10 years or so, each of the schools in the university does a review of their curriculum and their programs, all degrees and so forth. And SPS is doing that review this year. And we've already seen one aspect of it. A decision was made not to do any of the, I'm stumbling over the words executive education. There will be executive education programs like the Executive Master of Science, but there won't be anything for people outside of a degree program. That's where we had to move our sessions to, outside of the school, and we're running them on our own platform. But beyond that, this is being run at SPS by Eric Nelson and Tiffany Hughes. They're just looking at all programs. They're taking advantage of this review to do some alignment around programs, revise curriculum, and so forth. And while this is going on, Professor Cowan and I decided to step back. And once things are settled, we expect to be reconnecting with the whole program. So that's the explanation.
I will tell you, in just a couple of things to add there, and then we'll proceed. And if any of you want to talk about this in more detail, please do. And I know some of you have already asked us, but we think this is going to take a while because they started with tech management, and what they want to do is to harmonize all the programs, all the degree programs, and make them all similar. And so that is going to take a while because they decided to do tech management first because Art Langer left. And that gave them the opportunity to step in and do what they wanted to do. I would just say that, and then they're going to do all of them. And both Eric Nelson and Tiffany Hughes have responsibility for all the programs, the academic aspects of all programs. And both Deirdre and I know the two of them well. They have treated us well, continue to treat us well. I know, Deirdre, you actually, I guess I had the last interaction with Eric, but Eric asked for a copy of the summary of this, and I sent it to him in mid-January, and he responded back in a very nice and positive way and wants to see the book when it's done. So we still have a strong, a positive and a connected relationship with Eric and the team. So with that, it's just, we fit better when you've decided what you're going to do, and then we decide if we fit that, then we fit in the making of the new meal, if that makes sense to you all. So we've done enough of that, and we've decided creating new businesses, we'd rather see you all do that and us help you and guide you than us being in the middle of creating a new business. So that's that subject. And I thought now what we'll do is we'll move on to this. And by the way, I think you all know that Deirdre and I both have light blue blood instead of red blood. You know, as I like to say, and Deirdre likes to correct me, she's had somebody there at Columbia since the late 1700s. Deirdre, I think, is when.
And not quite that long, but I've had relatives and ancestors at Columbia since the 1920s.
Wow.
So it's sort of our family school, and you know, this is why I'm maintaining the connection, and Tom is too. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're hard to get away from Columbia. It's too important to us. And we've had this direct discussion with Eric, and Eric said to me directly, look, I'm the same way. It's hard to you're going to have a hard time getting me away from Columbia. So we'll be doing our independent things between now and the time that we get to see where things are, and then we decide how we connect. But we have so much important work that we'd like to do with you all, and to keep the concept of continuous learning, both for ourselves and with you all. So with that, and I thought we'd just go through quickly what we think of as the 8 characteristics of a great leader. And then what I'm going to do is to ask Deirdre to evaluate someone. As I said, someone not on this call, not somebody that will be joining the call, doesn't join these calls. And it shouldn't surprise you, because the kind of person that Deirdre will describe and the kind of person I will describe doesn't fit these characteristics. They're not going to take a Sunday morning like you all are, or a week afternoon or evening and watch the video. That's just not what they do. And as a result, it does show, the continuous learning people are different than those that have decided not to. So with that, I'll take a moment and just go through this. The first concept here is about thinking strategically and using sound judgment and making effective decisions. So we'll go through each one of these with the specific words, but the concept here is that great leaders, and the thing that separates out a leader from a doer, is that you immediately ask yourself, is there anything I need to think about before I do this? So if you think about what they teach you, even when you're being taught to be a lifeguard and you're being taught to save somebody in the water, the first thing they say to do, kick off your shoes. Right now, those of us that learned to swim with boots on, we don't kick off our shoes, right? But if you didn't learn to swim with combat boots, if you didn't learn to swim that way, then you're probably not going to kick off combat boots. But the point here is different. It's the point of just immediately looking at the situation and saying, do I have bulky clothes on? Should I get rid of those and dive in? Right? And great leaders think the same way. So even in emergency situations, great leaders always ask themselves, even if that answer is only a 2-second answer, it's the first 2 seconds, that 2 seconds may save the difference in whether you're successful or not. And you see this all the time in people that operate. So the point is not just in these lengthy discussions about where are we taking the company, but even something involving something like an emergency. It's to take that second and ask yourself, is there a strategic aspect to this? And then obviously it's sound judgment and effective decisions. And all you have to do is ask somebody like our friend Les Brun, who's he spends his life in public companies, is chair of public companies and so forth, large investments, billion-dollar investments. He will say the first thing I look for is somebody that has sound judgment. It is the question, whether a CEO or they're a board director or they're chair of a board. He said that is the weak aspect that you see across the board. And then making effective decisions is, as Professor Silberstein would tell you, effective decisions means that they can actually be executed. And that's why she causes me to write everything but this leadership book that I'm writing. has to be in a workbook format. Fortunately, she's given me a pass on this one, said you can do it, but you have to have an evaluation section at the end, which we're working on. Getting the job done. You know, Bob, you and I have done this a lot. This is the critical, the second most important thing. The first is, okay, I got to think about for that 2 seconds, do I kick my shoes off and take the coat off? And then the second thing you got to do is save the person, right? I mean, that's the next thing, because that is the thing people look to. But I think the thing that we frequently get caught up in, and you know, we'll have a second to talk about each one of these in a minute. But that question of getting the job done, that is such a critical aspect of what we do. And we think, oh, well, thinking strategically and being able to come up with a vision and a mission and strategy. Yeah, but it's actually executing on a regular basis. It's really tough. It's very tough. And then taking full responsibility. The question here is, do you blame? Do you blame, right? We see this all the time, and we'll get through this. The two examples that we're going to share with you are the people blame. They blame other people instead of taking the responsibility themselves. And sure, there's a time and a place for that, but when it's you that is causing this, you have to have that self awareness to understand when it's you. And this is where we're hoping that the concept of fit will help. Because does it feel right for you to take responsibility? Do you have what you need? Is it something you're comfortable with? Doing your own work, you know, individual contribution. We all know, and Amit, you could probably spend a lot of time on this one. Every CEO today has their own work to do. And you can go back, you know, and none of you have enough. Well, first of all of you have too much hair, and the hair you have is dark colored. You're not old enough to remember that CEOs used to not do any work. They used to think they didn't do work, and they had assistants, and they had people that would do. We still have people, I know it's amazing, but we still have people that don't do their own email. They have an assistant who reads their email and you know, helps them respond to the email. It's crazy. Not very many of those exist anymore. But today, it's an expectation that you have that no matter where you are, whether you're a chair of a board or you're a CEO or you're an individual contributor, you will have a portion of work that is yours to do. And do you do it yourself, or do you expect other people to do that work for you? We'll talk about some examples. And that is what we consider your individual contribution. It's not the team, it's not the company, it's not the organization, it's what your individual work is. And I'll tell you right away, the big issue there for leaders is your work is to think strategically and get the job done, right? And become an expert in the marketplace. That's what we're talking about today. Number 4, do you have a bias for action? And you all do, every single one of you do. But there are people that don't. There are people that they get, and where you get yourself caught, and this will be interesting to talk about, is where you feel uncomfortable in a situation, so you hesitate. And people that are thoughtful and strategic many times hesitate. Those who are not that way, they bias on the other direction. And they go ahead and act without hesitating. So it's having that feel and being comfortable enough that you understand the situation well enough that you can make that judgment of when is it a time to hesitate or when is it a time to act. It's a tricky balance. And again, those that fit the situation well, they have that innate sense of when do I pause and when do I take action. But you have a bias to take action. You remain an expert in the field, in the marketplace. And those of you that are deeply involved in some that I know are going to watch this video are people that are deep experts. I think in today's world, it is not, your expertise is not running a business. Your expertise is the marketplace and the product and how it functions within that marketplace. We've seen that change happen. And one of the instructive things that we'll be doing is at one point we'll start reading some books and reviewing some books, and you'll see that some of the literature has shifted in what is the expectation. Go back 40 years, 50 years, the expectation of a CEO was to run an organization well. This is the Sloan concept, that I'm going to run it well, the Ford concept of production rather than handmade individual things. And these concepts have evolved. And today, we're seeing CEOs come out of product. They're coming out of product. And they have more of a tech bias. This is why we think that the degree of the future for the future CEO is going to be what you all have done, which is the Masters in a Tech Management program that is much more of an MBA-like approach with a foundation in technology. And we believe that is going to be the future of this marketplace, this world of where the leaders of the future come from. We've seen it go through its phases. There was a marketing and sales phase. At one point, there was a legal phase. At one point, there was a financial phase, a production phase. We think it's now moved to product. Building a team. You have to be able to build a team. And going along with the team is the whole issue of culture and the whole issue of being able to evaluate talent. And how do you evaluate talent? Those of you that have been around Professor Silverstein, we have a concept of you have to remove your blinders. You cannot allow yourself to have blinders when it comes to talent. You are going to suboptimize. So regardless of whatever cultural or value set you have that says it's not appropriate to have blinders on when you evaluate talent and people, there's the whole concept of, if you don't believe in any of those, you're going to suboptimize. Because the day that you don't look for the highest and best quality talent because you have a blinder on about something, is going to be when your competitor doesn't. And they will not see that, and they will then compete with you strongly in the marketplace. So I happen to have a bias toward values, as most of you know, and so does Professor Silverstein. But regardless of whether you don't, if you don't believe in the value set that says we should look with no blinders on, talent doesn't have a look, it doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a race, it doesn't have a geography, it doesn't have a language, it doesn't have an accent. One of the smarter people we know has a great phrase, and some of you have even heard him say it. I may speak with an accent, but I don't think with an accent. Right. And I see, Subbu, I see you laughing because you probably saw him say this in a class that you were in. So, we have more friends joining. So anyway, you all know that this is a really important thing, but part of building that team is to be able to operate that way for whatever your reasons are. And then it's communicating the good and the bad. Right, you heard us. We decided we're going to talk about the elephant in the room before we even get started with the important topic. You have to be willing to open up to whatever you think the audience is going to be interested in, and you have to be willing to do that. I've worked with a number of you on this call that have had to deal with incredibly difficult things. With your companies that you are leading, and then also with your situations you're involved in, where to many people it'll look suboptimal what you're deciding to do or what your message is. But you have to have the courage to communicate. You have to solve problems and exploit opportunities. But one of the biggest issues here is, do you solve them or do you create them? I mean, we see leaders that come in and the first thing they do is create problems from day one. And if they do, you have to ask, do they really fit the situation? Because when you hire, and again, those are your friends and colleagues on the phone here, on the call, where you've hired people And the first thing you want is for them to get in and to solve problems for you. You don't want them to come in and make problems for you, right? Bob, I see you smiling because we've seen this before. There are some people that you know you could hire when you have a problem in certain, like marketing, right? We both know somebody that you could go hire and bring in, and they will help solve your marketing problem day one. And so you have to know that they're going to come in and they will solve the problems. And so the first thing for good fit is they solve problems. They don't create problems. And the second thing is they have also a bias to exploit opportunities, right? That's the other side of the equation. And this is the piece where sometimes people that are really good at solving problems, they're so good at that, they don't see opportunities. And they also don't see it that way. So this is what separates great high-level leaders, is you look at both sides of that equation and you balance them. You can't exploit opportunities if you have big problems you have to solve. You have to solve them first and then exploit the opportunity. And it's that balance again, the fit balance. I mentioned Les Brun, a close friend of mine, before. Some of you all know Les. He has a very simple statement. I hire somebody and they have 3 months. You identify the major problems and start dealing with them in those 3 months, because if you don't, I'm going to think they're yours. During those 3 months, as those goes along, I'm going to think they're the other person's. But if you haven't identified them and started to really seriously solve them, they're yours. And the one thing he will say, and I've said this to a couple of you on the phone, when you take over an organization, no matter if you're first line or you're the CEO or you're a board chair, you have 3 months to identify the people you don't want long-term and actually find a way to transition them. Because if you don't, your bosses, whether it be a board of directors or it be your second line leader, will look at you and say, well, you had 3 months to deal with it. They're now yours because you let it go. So this is the concept of the first 3 months. And it applies not only to hiring, or placing yourself in a new job where there are people like me, and poor Bob is the victim here, because when he took over his CEO roles, and I've helped through a couple of, that's the first thing I say to him is, Bob, is there anybody left that we need to figure out how we deal with? He's been very good at doing this, identifying the problems and dealing with the people that he just doesn't see fit what he wants to do long term. But it deals also with sitting in a role. Are you letting big issues fester? Or are you dealing with them? Are you identifying them and dealing with them? Because just even identifying them to the people above you and saying, now is not the right time for me to attack this. And saying, I'm going to deal with this after we deal with this. That in itself goes a long way, because then if they disagree with you, they will tell you. And if they don't tell you when they disagree with you, that's a communication issue that they have to solve. And this all comes down to, does a person fit or do they not fit? Because ultimately that is the subject. And it's a subtle subject. So before we get into this, what I thought might be really useful is to let Deirdre go through somebody that she and I know that we've worked closely with, that you all don't know, and you don't know, you have never worked closely with them, so you wouldn't know this. So please do not infer that we're talking about anybody here, and it's not a compendium of people, it is a person. And by the way, the reason why I'm doing this before we open this up is because what it does is it allows you to be able to very quickly, using this, you can very quickly evaluate someone very quickly. Now, there's another layer, which, okay, what are the actual KPIs that we're trying to hit, or the OKRs we're trying to hit? Okay, that's fine. But just quickly be able to evaluate somebody, which we think is one of the hardest things that people have to do. So in that process to aid things, I think that it is easier to do the evaluation in reverse order. So it's easier to understand it and to explain it in the order that we just talked about. But when you're evaluating somebody, doing it this way, and I think you'll agree as Deirdre goes through this, that this helps to do this. So Deirdre, I'm going to stop here and let you proceed, and then we're going to open it up to a discussion and let you all take the floor on this.
Okay. I'm going to describe the scenario here and then go through these characteristics. I want you to understand what we're talking about. And as I describe this, please understand that what I'm describing, and you will pick up the flaws in the situation, is so very common in the tech world that what I'm about to present actually represents an awful lot of what we see in technology. So the scenario is this. An entrepreneur who has 3 or so decades of experience in the tech industry at a high level has decided to go out and start his own company. And the company is based in support of clients of a large enterprise software company. And the scenario right now is that this large enterprise company has said that it is going to stop selling this software. It's not going to take it away from people, but people will continue to use this software. This entrepreneur that we're evaluating right now decided to base his business on these people who are continuing to use the software. Obviously, this is a shrinking market. So this entrepreneur also decided that he had to go out and develop a new line of business so that he would have a company going forward. To that end, he hired someone with extensive experience in technology and in the marketplace to come in and build a new line of business. With that, let me start to go through this. So first thing, it's about fit. I want to make an important point about fit. And that is, you've probably heard Professor Cowan and me distinguish between leadership and management. Leadership is involved in the strategic work, in the oversight work. Management is involved in strategy execution, in planning, in identifying the people, and in delivering results, and so forth. The two roles are intertwined, but there is a distinction there. And it is my experience that an awful lot of people who fit managerial roles can never fit strategic roles because they can never move out of a managerial position of execution into a leadership position of developing the strategy to begin with. And you can see this, if you start to think in this way, you start to see it all through life. About a week ago, Professor Cowan and I were evaluating the football teams and the football playoffs and how well the coaches actually had strategies, or were they just executors at a managerial level. And if you think about that, you can see it very much. Now, this entrepreneur we're talking about, clearly terrific at a managerial level, but he never fit the strategic level. So there's a basic understanding here that he can't make, or he has not demonstrated yet, an ability to think strategically. I suggest that one of the first decisions here is the decision to continue to maintain clients in a diminishing business is questionable from a strategic point of view in terms of resources, in terms of relationships with customers, in terms of the ability to take what you have, your resources, and dedicate them to a new line of business. But that aside, as we march through this, you'll see that this person operates purely at a managerial level. So this is a main point about the fit discussion. So solve problems. One of the things that this entrepreneur did in relation to this new line of business, remember that he brought in an experienced executive, knowledgeable in the marketplace, was to make life impossibly difficult for this person, was never able to delegate the work to this person to actually build the line of business, creating a mess of problems. And this obviously kept them from exploiting a marketplace opportunity here. In fact, this person who was brought in left the company after about 6 months, went off, joined a new company, and has now just been in the process of rolling out a massive new global enterprise level software system. Obviously, has the capabilities to do it, but this entrepreneur lost that capability because he created the problem of not delegating authority, micromanaging, interfering with decisions, and therefore interfering with the exploitation of opportunities. This is actually the managerial mindset at work here. If you can't think strategically, it's very easy to default to management or execution or micromanagement. While it's essential for a leader to stay up at the level of strategy. About communication, it's not simply communication, it's the quality of communication. When you treat someone that you brought in to grow your business like a very low-level employee, you're not communicating well. When you are not delegating people, when you're not telling the people you're working with that they actually report to this other person instead of to you, you're creating massive problems in communications and getting things done. Similarly, this person interfered with the leader brought in terms of communicating with the marketplace. The entrepreneur insisted on controlling all communications with clients. Now remember that the person brought in was supposed to build a new marketplace. So you have an interference with that person being able to go out and gain new clients. And now you're starting to understand why this person left fairly quickly, because it became an impossible situation. Building teams. Well, I think what I've just been saying explains that this person couldn't build teams. When you are so focused on your own role in an organization and on maintaining your role that you cannot delegate, you cannot assign authority, you cannot create an org chart that allows everyone to get their work done, you're not building a team. You're creating a lifestyle business here. A business to maintain his own lifestyle as running this organization, as opposed to building a growth organization. That's something to keep in mind. You see this frequently in the tech world, where you have a tech entrepreneur who wants to be out there being a tech entrepreneur, build products, sell, work with people, but they can never then move beyond that being the lifestyle they want into being a growth business. Keep this in mind now. Remaining an expert in the field. This person, the entrepreneur, was an absolute dead cold expert in the enterprise software and in the software that he was maintaining with customers. But this person never built the expertise that was needed to then go out and grow into this new marketplace. He depended on the expertise of the person coming in. Now think of what this does, that you are used to being an expert. You're used to being the person who knows, who can design the marketplace, who can make decisions in the marketplace. And now you don't have the knowledge and the ability to make those decisions, to talk with customers, to grow a business. This can be devastating if you're still operating at a managerial level without fully internalizing the leadership level and the strategic thinking mindset that good leaders have to do. Instead, as this person brought in the expert, in effect, the entrepreneur started to passive aggressive, possibly. Sometimes overt disagreements with the person who was the expert, interfering with the new expert in the new marketplace from doing the work, overriding that person, based without the expertise. This is another situation that is very common not just in the tech world, but throughout business. You see it all over the place. I think most of you know I spent 15 years at Deloitte. I could go back to my Deloitte time and spend the next 5 hours outlining situations where this happened, where the senior partners did not want to give up the leadership ability to the people who were real experts in this. And I'll also make a note that you're starting to see whispers about this in relation to various forms of AI, that even CTOs and CIOs who are dead cold experts in, say, enterprise software, enterprise hardware, and so forth, may no longer be the experts in, say, the use of generative AI throughout the business as supporting people. And so I'm expecting there to be a lot of clashes within IT departments between the people, the CTOs who are supposed to be operating strategically, the CIOs who are implementing the hardware and software, and then the younger people that they're hiring who are growing up using new forms of AI without having the expertise at the upper levels there. So this is something to keep an eye on. Bias for action. I see bias for action tied in with all of these other things, that if you get these other things right, you position yourself to be able to act. Clearly, this entrepreneur is failing. I don't think it is wrong to say that this person is frankly failing in these points. It's very difficult to say to someone, like we all want to be nice to people. It's very difficult. I've been in the position as a leader myself where I've had to tell people who work for me that they're failing. It's very important. It's very difficult to get those words out, but they don't understand the situation and have no ability to grow themselves if they don't understand that they're failing as they are, and so forth. So this person, this entrepreneur, is failing here. Any action that this person takes, even if this person had a bias for action, and I've got to say he did have a bias for action, but it was starting to be the wrong action. He could not take the action that was needed to grow the business because he had messed up in points 8 through 5 with allowing someone who was an expert to come in and build a new marketplace. So that a bias for action can work against a company at this point. If you don't get the strategy right, if you haven't let the experts build the marketplace, if you don't have the right teams in place, your bias for action can just destroy what you have left, because you're working in the wrong direction. You do your own work. This is something where, again, remember this entrepreneur has decades of experience as the dead cold expert building some good things, likes doing his own work, never left behind doing his own work. And a lot of tech entrepreneurs like to still do the bench work and so forth, which is great. That's how you continue to learn and so forth. But if you can no longer do the work in the new marketplace, in the new area of expertise, but you try to do that work, it's the same as doing action in the wrong place. You mess it up. You need to, as an individual contributor, maintain your level of expertise, have the right people around you, understand how to communicate with these people, and understand how to exploit the opportunity. So you cannot do your own work, you cannot contribute if these other things aren't in place. And this is a place where this person failed miserably. And this is actually the point at which the expert who was brought in just threw up her hands and walked out. Because experts like that want to do their own individual contribution. Get the job done and take responsibility. Unfortunately, this entrepreneur was a blame person. It's sort of like, what do you mean? I brought this person in, you recommended this person, brought them in, we set out the marketplace, and they didn't get the job done. So they're to blame for my business failing. Now, this involves some self-reflection. Obviously, this is not a self-reflective person, but if you are going to get the job done, you need to have everything in place so you can get the job done. And then you need to understand that you are responsible for having everything in place so the job can get done. And if the job doesn't get done, you look at what you did and what you didn't do, take responsibility for it, and fix things. Fix things very quickly. Professor Cowan and I actually have a series of reviews where we recommend leaders do weekly reviews, monthly reviews, quarterly reviews, and frankly, the weekly reviews would have picked up the problems if this entrepreneur was using the weekly reviews as they should have been done. And once you get someone who starts blaming other people, the situation becomes impossible. You know that this person cannot be a leader. Can't even be a high-level manager either. Think strategically, use sound judgment, make effective decisions. Well, I think you're in a position to say whether this entrepreneur passes or fails on this one, given everything I've said. Even though the decisions were made, the decisions did not become effective because the entrepreneur interfered. So unless a decision can become effective, it almost doesn't matter that the decision has been made. That's the equivalent of, every January 1st, everyone in the universe says, yes, I'm going to lose 10 pounds this year. Well, that's a nice sentiment, but it becomes an effective decision when you actually take steps to lose those 10 pounds. And this entrepreneur did not take the steps to make the decision effectively. So while this person was at a very high level thinking strategically, didn't do anything else to set out the strategy, do all of the things around it to create the strategic culture, the culture of learning, the culture of execution, and did not use judgment in how he went about running the business. So unfortunately, this person fails. Professor Cowan, you may want to have some other comments about this person, but I think we've gone into it, and I don't want to beat this whole situation to death.
No, you've done a great job. Now, here's where the fit question is so wrong, because if you ask this individual, they would say, well, I can't seem to get the growth business going. I can't seem to get the software business growing and going. And it's now years later and still nowhere where the person that they released, or that left actually, has gone on and released a huge, and by the way, if we told you what this person just released, you might even know, or you may even be a peripheral user of this. So it's not a minor thing. I mean, she went on to a huge job. And just to be able to lose that talent. Now, shame on us for not recognizing there would be a fit issue to begin with. And I know, Bob, this is one of the things you're spending your time on now, is to help people understand how they fit in these roles in various situations as a very high-level leader. I'll just take a quick one and I'll describe somebody again. I'll take somebody who's not involved in a tech company. Okay. And in this case, it's not a male, but a similar demographic. The question is, do they fit? The question there, and see, this is the question about the situation that Professor Silberstein described. If all this person had in their mind was they wanted a lifestyle business that would pay them $300,000 a year for the rest of their existence, they could probably pull it off. But when their concept is, I want a software company, I want to have a big software company that's going to go public, but they function this way for years, then they don't fit their vision. They don't fit their vision. Case in point here, what's the fit of the people that made the decision to hire this individual, the one I'm talking about? Was it to destroy things, or was it to build something? It's not clear. It's really not clear. And it's not clear that you don't end up that way. They may have thought they were taking somebody in place to build something, but they ended up destroying it. So they'd say, okay, well, fine, I'm just going to live with it and we'll deal with it later, because we wanted to kind of make changes anyway. And so it's not clear whether they fit. Now, would they fit a model that you and I all would be interested in doing? Not at all. But we're not always playing, this is a semi-government role. It's not always clear what somebody's objective is. Do they fit what we think? No. Have they solved the big issues in the first 3 months? We would say absolutely not, because they're making problems. They started creating problems from day one. Just the moment they came in place, they started creating problems. We would say, being people that focus on the growth side, and I know that's where most of you all focus too, that they're not even exploiting the right opportunities. They think they are, but they're not. Not the way we see it. And so they're going to miss a huge set of opportunities because they're creating a bunch of problems and they're heading in a path that we don't think is a real opportunity, mainly because they don't fit number 5. They aren't an expert in the field. They're just not. We're not clear what their expertise is, other than being able to pull off getting a job like that. But they're clearly not an expert in the field or in the marketplace. They don't communicate at all. At all. I mean, I hate to say this, they don't communicate at all with anybody outside of their absolute control. And those people that are in their absolute control, they have brought in from other organizations. And then they ignore everybody else. It's a fascinating situation. And when I say don't communicate, I mean don't communicate. Building a team, I will let you decide. Have they actually taken the existing team and tried to figure out what the substance is there? Or have they just brought the same team with them that they've had, small team with them that they've had over all these years? And they're just ignoring real talent. I mean, you talk about having blinders on. That's as bad as anything. And they may be saying, if they were to answer my argument, they may say, and by the way, they may say legitimately so, oh, I'm bringing an area of expertise into this that it doesn't have today. I'm bringing an area of other aspects that doesn't exist today. Well, okay, fine. But what about all the piece that you're giving up that you haven't even engaged with to even understand, have any one-on-ones with, right? So that just doesn't look like it's going to work. And as I said, they're definitely not an expert, even though they might look that way on paper. And we all know you can create an incredibly cool looking resume and bio, right? That doesn't truly reflect what your capabilities are. And then there are those, and most of those are the people like yourselves that you don't strengthen your bio as much as you could. And I know all of you, right? Because you happen to have an aspect of self-reflection. So you're always a little bit more critical of yourself than we think you should be. They don't do their own work. Well, bias for action. They do have a bias for action. And we think in the completely wrong direction because of what we talked about. Then, do you do your own work? No, they don't. They hire people to do their work, including hiring someone that they believe is in fact a market expert who is far from it, who's not even close. But they kind of look interesting on paper. And so are they actually doing their own individual contribution? No, because your own individual contribution in being a leader, it starts with that you're an expert in your field and the marketplace. Both, right? It's not just your field, but it's the market in which you operate. Because how can you be an effective leader if you don't understand the marketplace and aren't dead cold? And, Carlson, you're working in a situation where you've got somebody who you work for who knows the marketplace dead cold and is negotiating and working their way through. How do I manage how do I negotiate this? I mean, and Bob, I know you do the same thing. You're looking at that marketplace and saying, look, there are opportunities here. How do I maneuver my way? That's what great entrepreneurs do. And it starts there. Then do you have all these other characteristics to say, am I now the right person to lead something? Or should I go find somebody to do it for me because I fit better in a different role? Getting the job done, again, is it the job that we think looking at it from the outside, or is it the job the individual is thinking they're doing, or is it the job the organization wants? We don't know. It's not clear. Do they take responsibility? No. This is one of the things that you all could, they're completely blame culture. It is, no, it's the old guys that are doing it. And old guys, I mean, when I say that, I'm talking about my, people that I know that are all different races, genders, colors, right? No, it's their problem. They're the problem. None of us are any of the, we haven't created all this, they created it. So even though they're stepping on themselves, they point back and say, no, it's those guys. But that's a common problem with a leader who's failing, is that they blame others instead of taking it for themselves and saying, am I really doing what needs to be done here? And, you'll find in those situations that the way you can identify that and tell the difference between whether somebody is doing what they've been hired to do or somebody is doing something that they haven't been hired to do is because the people above them will step in and remove some things. They'll remove some people, they'll remove some responsibilities, right? Because they don't want to damage any kind of long-term opportunity. So you can tell whether it's really fitting the situation or not, or if it's just trying to figure out, okay, now how do I make the best with what I'm dealing with? But you can kind of get at it in that full responsibility because they don't have full responsibility. Maybe a year later and they still don't have every single bit of it. And the people that are in charge won't let them. And I'm talking about somebody here, by the way, who's not the CEO of something, right? So it's not the board that's doing this. And then think strategically. Again, there's no way you can, because if you're not an expert in the field, in the marketplace, how can you think strategically? I mean, it may appear that you are, but if you go back to the problem issue, if the first problems you create are created because you don't spend that 2 seconds and say, should I kick my shoes off and take my coat off? And you start making decisions and you create problems, then you cannot do number one. So there's an example of somebody that's not in tech that is making a huge mess of something. At least it appears to. But how you can quickly, and the point behind these stories is not to let you all guess at somebody, right? That was not the point. The point here is how easy it is for you to take apart very quickly a leader. So if you're sitting on a board of directors, or you're a second level leader, or you're a first level leader, looking down and up and saying, do I fit? Right? You can be a great leader. And I've worked with you all, and I know you all, and I know a few of you who have looked at that situation and you're great leaders, and you say, you know what? I don't fit. So rather than continue to do damage to myself, I'm going to get out of this and go do what I really fit doing and what I love doing. So the whole point of this is not so much to identify great leaders or to articulate those details for, it's to let you be able to evaluate, what am I dealing with? And how does that affect my ability to be a great leader in a situation, and what do I need to work on? So I'm going to stop here and let you all now tell us what you think about these subjects, because I know you have your own thoughts. Carlson.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, all. So I think two thoughts came to mind. The first, I really like the idea about reversing the order for evaluation. The reason being is it really puts sort of the fit, or like the person, and it's their emotional intelligence and their fit into a corporate culture, a company culture, front and center, and sort of then using that as the basis to assess all the remaining bullet points. I thought that was a great idea to do. Secondly, I think for someone who isn't right now a CEO or board level director yet, I think it's also a great this discussion that we had a great opportunity to think about when you're applying for a job, what kind of questions should you ask the hiring managers, the company that you're looking at, to assess are these sort of steps of evaluation that you presented here, how is the hiring manager thinking about it? How's their manager thinking about it? And I think that to use that as a guideline or guardrail is great, not only for the leader themselves, but also for someone who's looking to join a potential team or a company. So yeah, just
I'm glad you said that, because that's the intent also for somebody like yourself who's, you're finishing your education and looking to those opportunities. It's exactly right. That's what we intended. So thank you. And thank you for the kind words. And any thoughts you all have that you'd like to share with us independently, please do, including material. So if you've run across a book that you think might be useful that adds to this, please send those to us so that we can start incorporating those in our ideas, a book, an article, whatever. So Amit, I think you are next.
Amit is next.
Hi, it's great to see you guys all again. It's fantastic. I love the orders that you switched. It works both ways. It absolutely works both ways depending on the context. Me personally, I've done both. This reverse order is for my project, my startup that I'm working on, and the other one is my day job. And context switching out there is number one. It's very important. Number two, I have personally learned is self-awareness. You have to know yourself first before you can lead or teach or mentor anyone in your team or within your circle. And the other one is learn to switch gears fast. If something doesn't work, whether it's your project, your day job, your whatever, learn to switch gears quick, swiftly, and decisively. And know your subject matter. So for me, on both aspects, I'm a firm believer of mile wide and mile deep. And the mile deep is where the problem is. So as a leader or someone who is doing a project, you look at it strategically, but then you identify those areas where you could perceive a challenge down the road. And that is more of a sense and feel. I haven't found a magic formula yet or come across one. And I don't believe one exists. I think it's situational. And it's a more of a gut sense and feel. And okay, this might be a problem. Let me explore this and look at the possibilities and prepare for them. So when they do arise, you either get the right team member, or you take the right action, or you do what you have to in order to keep moving forward. One book that really helped me, and this was from a course I did with Authentic Leadership Development, where I literally had to draw a map from when I was born till today, and all the crucibles in life, the good times and the dark times that I experienced, and what they did to me as an individual, and how they shaped my perception of life, literally, and how I deal with life. One book is Forged in Crisis. It's by Nancy Kane. She's a Harvard professor, and that book gives examples of 4 leaders, one being Lincoln. But that book dives into all the dark sides of their life and how that helped shape them as a leader. We all talk about the fun and good stuff, but I think it's the opposite side that really shapes the really good leaders. And in my experience, the real good ones are extremely humble. They listen extremely well. They admit when they're wrong right away. and they are not afraid to ask for help. The first thing they'll do is, listen, I don't know this. Please help me. And you'll be amazed at the help you'll get from your team right away. I'll pause it.
No, that's wonderful. And you know, it's interesting. I've seen that book. I have not opened it or tried to look at it. I will do it now. Thank you. Because it does appeal to me, because I believe that great leaders have failed. They've struggled, because that trying to get yourself out and recover from that. And you may be looking at me saying that I'm what, a third of the man I was that you all remember. And you're right. I weigh about 60 pounds less. I can't tell whether it's the treatment or who's going to win. Is the treatment going to win, Deirdre, or is my health going to win? I think my health's going to win, actually.
Health's going to win. Yes,
Right.
it will.
But we have a little bit more. And so I'll probably end up, as a result of all this, losing another 10 or 15 pounds. But it's okay. I think my health is winning, which is not what was happening before. As you saw, I ballooned up. And so this is now my metabolism and everything is starting to work. And I can't keep up with it. So I think that's good. But you know, the point behind all this is that exact point, Amit, is being able to know and have that resilience to come out, right? To come out and say, like with me, I have way too much stuff to do. I'm just not going to fall prey to this, right? I think that's a critical aspect of all this. So thank you for that recommendation. I will certainly take a look at that. And one of the things we will do going forward is we're going to adapt the topics. We're also going to select some things that we think might be useful to read for the whole group and talk about those, much like we would in the classroom that Professor Silberstein and I hold. So again, please send your recommendations, send your thoughts. And I promise you, if you do that, I won't subject you to, like the great literature people do, forcing you through Homer. I won't force you through Drucker, because I know most of you that have taken classes from us have had to endure. We think endear, but endure yourself with Drucker. So, Yasir, I see you have your hand up.
Yep. Good to see that you're coming back with your health. So I'm glad that you're gonna progress
Yes.
with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the examples that you guys gave is about the entrepreneur doesn't have the expertise in the marketplace, and he hires someone else. And what about the fear concept that he had, that someone else is coming in, I don't know this market, and this is my company, someone is going to take over. And with that kind of fear that he is going to overlay the communication channel that he did, right? And then he's exploiting a person, he did all the reversal from 8 to 5 because of maybe the fear that he had in mind, and with all the expertise that he had and all the experience that he had, and then because the business that he started is diminishing, right? It's the support business with an expert. So the actual business was the new software sale or the new software product that is going to be. And if he doesn't have a role in there, I mean, I'm not saying the role in there, he has a fear that he might not have a role in there if he doesn't, put him forward, although he doesn't have that expertise. So what do you think about that part, that this fear actually kind of was the main point that might have...
So, Deirdre knows this individual better than I do, so I'm going to let her respond. But from my point of view, absolutely. So, but Deirdre, I'm going to let you take this one.
Absolutely. And this actually ties in with a comment that I was going to make on what Amit was saying as well. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone has the mindset of an entrepreneur, which requires I guess a sense of exploration, a sense of trying the new and so forth by definition. And you're right, Yasir, that this person was operating more like a corporate type, I believe. And I believe that a lot of the decisions that he made were in terms of corporate hierarchy, corporate safety, the sense that decisions are made at the high level and you follow these sorts of decisions. You don't explore or play This is this is something I run into with the clients in my consulting business. A lot of them say, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur. And then they can't forget that they're coming out of one of the big Wall Street banks, and they expect that whole bank structure around them. It's sort of like, you mean I have to sell? Yeah, you have to sell. There's no more sales department out there. So how are you going to do this? And it's those sorts of concepts about understanding the whole nature of entrepreneurism and understanding the mindset of the entrepreneur, which by definition is always looking at something new, is always learning, is always trying something new, is always acting like a novice in a way. You'll sometimes hear about this. Are you thinking as if you have to learn, or do you take great pride in what you have learned and can't get beyond that? And I think this particular entrepreneur could never get beyond that, was afraid of losing status within the corporate structure that he was used to, didn't understand the nature of building new marketplaces in an entrepreneurial sense, and therefore likely should never have been an entrepreneur like that, or should have relinquished the title of CEO and become the head of the division he wanted to remain in charge of, and let someone else come in and take over the CEO role, which could explore the new as well as maintain the old.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I think I think too, from, again, Deirdre knows the individual better than me, but I sensed and Deirdre, I'd like to get your view. I sensed that they're not a learning machine. You know, almost everyone on this call is a learning machine. You really are. And you've proven it to us even by showing up today. You're a learning machine. I didn't sense this individual as a learning machine.
No, I think you're absolutely right. This person, it would sit there and say, I know the marketplace. I know the marketplace. It's sort of like, no, you don't. You know the marketplace for this declining product, but that's not the thing. You can't extend the knowledge to other things. I want to throw something else in here just to get you thinking a little bit. I am not what you would call a techie person. I'm an entrepreneur. I understand more about tech than almost anyone else, but I haven't built a career in technology. It's my sense that there's starting to be among technology people this differentiation between are they keeping up with the technology, or are they satisfied in their role as CTO or CIO? So that to someone like me, there was always a unified tech department. They always knew everything and all of them interact and so forth. I think you are going to see fragmentation in tech departments now, with possibly the older people with more established roles, particularly tech C-level roles, not relinquishing power to perhaps younger employees who know the new and evolving technologies more. So this very same problem that Amit and Yasir are talking about is also something I think most of us are going to see in technology today in the world. So a lot of other people have hands, but I think Nahid was the next one. So jump in here, Nahid.
Yeah, I will be quick. First, I want to thank Deirdre for inviting me to this talk. Excellent presentation. I have two comments. The first comment is regarding the slide that it is presenting. Number 8 and number 1. To me, they are not completely separated. If you cannot solve a problem, is it to think about the tactical or strategic, you cannot have it. I mean, I have been around for a long time. People get a problem without even understanding the problem. They try to go solve it. So to me, they are related. The second comment I want to add is what Amit was saying, and add to it. I believe there are two other characteristic of a leader I would like to see is they lead by example. And as Amit said, they are listening, and also they build trust. To me, trust is very important. Do you trust your leadership? because if you don't trust them and they are not, so that's a huge thing. So I'm going to pause, and and thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to stop.
No, those are excellent points. And you will see those.
I'm going to see a series.
Book, right? But no, it's really hard. And your point about 8 and 1, absolutely. That's why I bookended them that way. Because you either fail it the other way or you fail this way, and you fail right away, right? And so that's why Amit, I think, was so prescient in the way he said, I evaluate myself this way, but I run my day the other way. And that's the concept that we're at. I appreciate the concepts about leading by example and building trust, because those are both dear to my heart, and I know dear to almost everybody's heart. So, but thank you for telling us, and I'll make sure that we make sure those are properly highlighted.
Thank you.
And Bob, you had your hand up next, and you took your hand down, and I want to still give you the chance to weigh in here.
Yeah, that was operator error. However, I did taking it down. I noticed that. So just observations in listening to this, and that's the courage that it takes, which builds trust, to have that, to either find someone else to take on the mission or the problem, or do it yourself. And if you're going to find someone else, you have to help them become the expert, because if you are the expert to some degree, you're the one that maybe can be most helpful, and you have to change the role you're playing. And that is a risk in and of itself, but you're going to take a risk somewhere along the way. And if it's going to be a people risk, then you have to back this person up in order to gain that trust and be successful. And then what it reminded me of what we're all talking about relative to lifestyle businesses is lifestyle businesses are about more than just the money. And to what you were just saying, Deidre, it can be the pride you have in being the expert, or defining the problem in front of everybody, or being the woman, or being the man. And the lifestyle business is also what you take out of it from an ego perspective. And if you don't really understand yourself and you're not self-aware, comments that were made earlier too, you might not be able to really empower someone. So you'll hire them in the new role, but then you just can't let them do your job because you haven't dealt with your own perspective of why you brought this person in.
We've never lived anything like that together, have we, Bob?
Well,
nope.
I mean,
We've never been trying to negotiate and navigate that one.
Yeah, part of why after the successful track record that we had, Tom, and the company's doing well right now on its way, but part of why I left the last company is we had a different view and strategy, and I knew that I couldn't let that go, right? That I would be pounding this other vision, and then it was time to hand things over and move on. And it sounds like in the example that you're talking about here, somebody made the decision to bring somebody in, but then they just don't want to let go of what fulfills them day to day, which sounds like being a theoretical expert versus supporting the person they brought in who's clearly capable from what you had said.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and thanks for the comment. So Amit, I think you were next.
Amit's next.
Yeah, hi. I just want to add a few more things. This just keeps pouring in. This is great. One, and I have experienced this, and all of these that I'm some personal experience, is the fear of failing, because you've led people and whatever you have done, your teams up to a certain point. So beyond a certain point, everybody's looking to you. And at times, I catch myself overthinking a situation where the answer is right there in your face. And because you're afraid of making that one wrong move and how everybody's going to perceive you with that one decision. So that you just have to get it out of the window. It should not weigh you down. The other aspect which I have personally grown out of, and it's an everyday, I think it's an everyday battle for all of us, is ego. When you are assigned to a certain office, a certain chair, a certain title, there's a weight and importance that comes with it that sometimes get to people's heads because of the C title or what have you. And that could also alter and impact the decision making and just your entire being. And with that office and title, also sometimes what I experienced is you get disconnected from things happening on the ground. And I believe that the leaders that really make it, like Steve Jobs, Bob Iger, even leaders like Mother Teresa and Gandhi, the whole spectrum, they had their feet and ears closely to the ground. They knew what was happening. And if they couldn't, they had trusted people. And that aspect of trust is that was brought up is super critical, because the people that you trust will filter the noise and will give you the information that you need in order to make those strategic decisions. And it's extremely difficult, in my opinion, and in my experience, to find those people that you jive with. You're on that same wavelength. You think the way they. If you find those, put a handcuff on them if you can. Don't let them go. Because
And in that case, it's very hard to figure out where they fit organizationally too. We've seen this before where somebody you've identified that person and you say, all right, now what am I need to keep them here. I want to have them next to me, but what do I call them? And how can I and how can I make them basically chief strategy officer of a company, right? But also kind of make them a little bit of a COO. And I mean, it becomes a very interesting problem for a business to figure out, what do I do with that? And that's a hard one. It's the second time I have fear noted here. The first time was when Yasir mentioned it, right? And then now it's this one. So fear is a really interesting thing, and egos come up a couple of times. So really, really good points. Thank you. And I want to, I just want to make sure, Dan, don't leave, because I have a picture I want to show you that you'll resonate with. So my friend,
Awesome.
my friend and colleague, Dan Hurley, has been able to join. It's great to see you, man.
Great to
Oh.
see you too. Thank you
And-
for inviting me.
Of course. So just don't go anywhere until I've shown you the picture.
Oh yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm good. I'm good now.
All right. All
Um,
right. So Deirdre.
Jake is next.
Yeah, hey folks, really great to be in this meeting again. Thank you for hosting us. Yeah, I mean, this is a great framework, and I'm in a interesting place where I'm leaving one of the biggest companies and going into the smallest company in the world, which is my own startup. And I'm trying to take this framework and reflect on my past experiences, and also position, look at it, look at my own venture through this lens, right? Really great framework. I think it really resonated with me. The one thing I kind of also feel like is important is ethics of the individual alongside with all these qualities. I feel like in terms of looking at your business as a machine that needs to continuously earn the trust of customers, and as a leader, you need to continuously earn the trust of your employees. I think, and I think this goes kind of into the sound judgment, right? But just being able to demonstrate that you make sound judgment and also ethical judgment is going to be very important too.
You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you're telling me these things, because I'm making a note of every single one of them. And the ethics goes along with the trust point. That it's critical that those exist in the culture. And those are all, to me, around building a team. And it's back to the point Amit was talking about, which is, how do you build a team if you don't how can you really build a team without a serious team that helps you do what you need to do if you don't have a strong culture that is founded on whatever the contextual ethics are, right? Because the ethics have to be contextual to where you're operating, who you're operating with, what you're doing. But no, you're right, and I'm glad you're making these notes. I'm glad I have a page full of notes now. That was what I was hoping I'd come away with. So great to see you, Jake. Great to see you. So I think
Srinivas,
Srinivas was next. Okay. Oh, by the way, please, it's already 8:30, 9:30, 10:30.
Yeah.
Please, if you have something you need to go do, please feel free to do that. You all have been kind enough to stay this long, except I'd like Dan to hold on just because I want to show him the picture that I want to show him. But if you need to go, Dan, you tell me and I'll show you the picture. But please feel free. We hate to lose you, but we understand schedule-wise.
so Srinivas, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Professor Dery, thanks for hosting this. Good to see you all after a long time. A couple of observations. I mean, not an opinion, but the ethical judgment. I'm with you on that, Jake. But the bias, when we are talking, when we are building the team, as Amit pointed out, that identifying the right people who can work as an eyes and ears for you is pretty important. At the same time, that has an issue too, that you may not have, you are aware that you don't want to have any bias, but then your eyes and ears may have the bias, and that may translate you. I mean, you're not seeing, I mean, you have to see with your lens parallelly that, if what if the other guy has some priorities for some specific things? What is the other view that you have to take? I mean, everybody learns from their experiences, and I felt in a couple of instances that probably I didn't take a right decision because I went by these XYZ people, but probably I should have got other opinions, because this happened to me more of offshore teams because I don't monitor them every day. So I have to depend on the views that I hear from the managers there. So that's one. The second thing that I observed, the number 5, remain expert in your field. That's the best case scenario in my view, because if somebody is starting an AI company, that guy is an AI expert, great. But a lot of times an entrepreneur who comes with an idea or who trusts an idea may come with appreciating the idea or identifying the opportunity, and then come with a lot of contacts, because a lot of CEOs are there because of their contacts, their reach in the market, able to get the funding, able to bring the right people onto the board, right people onto the advisory board, whatever it is. So that I have seen traditionally in a number of situations. Not every time they're experts, but they're able to identify the opportunity and quickly react on it, gather the right people there into that. So even it's a 4 or 5 people team to start with, they say, okay, we have a gap here, we may need somebody else. And then they have to decide who should be the CEO. All the technocrats would decide the CEO should be a person who should be facing the world, able to manage things, get more contacts in them. So that person may not be a full expert, but he would be able to identify the opportunity. My 2 cents.
Completely understand. And I think the point here is usually those people that are really good at that I've seen, Srinivas, and I'm sure you have too, they become an expert over time, right? This is something that you all were talking about in a meeting. I think you were talking about the same thing, is that, if you're humble enough and you're intuitive enough and you're introspective enough, you say, look, I don't have the expertise. I'm going to go bring that person in. And then you open yourself up to learning. And I've seen that before. I've seen some people on this call do it. And it's really wonderful when you see. But you have to be a learning machine. And if you start out as not being a learning machine, then I think that's when you divert into some of the points you all were making, which is the fear point. Yasir was talking about, Amit was talking about, I think that's also a problem. But no, those are good comments. I'm glad I captured them. Dan, I know you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wanted to sort of reemphasize the point on trust, because it's so it's been an issue right now. We're going through a reorg, and there's there's obviously general confusion when that happens anyway. But I read a very interesting article that sort of honed in on what I think exactly is the problem we're having with this transformation. And the article was all about the importance of fair process to build the trust. So if people don't understand what went into the process of making the decision, then they just default to, assuming the unscrupulous, and they just assume the worst. And the process itself, if it is fair and transparent, people can get behind. The whole article was about research that people will get behind a decision they don't agree with if the process was fair. And I thought it was super interesting, because I feel like even the people that might agree with the decisions are not, because the process wasn't fair. So it's just super impactful to try to, I know you, this is what you practice from experience. I know this, but you got to bring everybody along.
You know what? Please send that along, and I'll share that with everybody.
Sure.
Those things are hugely valuable.
Yeah.
And that is I mean, we all live in that.
Yeah.
We've all lived those situations, and sometimes really more currently than we would like. And that's when to the point you all were making. Take care, Carlson. It was great to have you. But that is a problem, Dan, a real problem. And I'm glad you've raised it, because boy, that's when you lose everybody, right? And that's when you lose the team, and you lose the ability to actually execute effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to drop it into the chat.
Okay. And Subaru was next, I think, right?
Subaru's next.
Subaru. I've never called you Subaru before. That is an awful thing. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Mercedes or Porsche. I should really call you Porsche, because I think you're more of a Porsche than you're certainly not a Subaru.
All good, Professor. I think one thing which I always do is shorten my name everywhere I go, and I logged in with a different account here that kind of not allowing me to shorten my first name.
I know, me too. I have, but you know what? This works really well. What I like so much about Google is that it's HD, first of all, and everything is clear. But also, I get to see more of you all along with the slides, so that's good. So yes, I understand.
Wonderful. Thank you, Professor and Data, for driving this. Happy New Year, everyone. And hey, congrats, Jake. I'm so excited for you, and best wishes for everything you do. And yeah, good luck. I think, fortunately or unfortunately, been through failed startups in the past, which we all thought like we are like blindsided on constraints. And one thing which I kind of feel that with all these comments here, realizing and dealing with constraints, knowing that the constraints are there, that we all knew that there will be constraints in everything we do, but at times we get blindsided on the constraints. And in one of the previous startup that I was part of, some of these evaluations that we have here on the screen, it pushes or spotlight a leader out of the comfort zone, especially giving a distinction between a leader living by principle versus a bookish leader, whether a leader really inscribes all these things into this, right? Whenever the constraints blow up. So that's when that self-awareness that Amit was talking about, realizing the self-reflection, staying away from the ego. So that's whenever the constraints blow up, that's when all these things plays a critical role, and realizing those constraints when it's going to blow up, that's when I feel that's the point number 8 and 1, thinking strategically and using the sound judgment to make effective decisions, realizing when it will blow up plays a critical role. And that startup, we realized like we will be getting the funding here and then playing that ego game here and there really screwed the whole startup in the bigger picture. But realizing those constraints proactively does help.
No, that's good advice. Look, I've got a page full of notes here that you all have given me. So this is wonderful. This is exactly what I need, is the sense coming from all the different directions. I think we have run out of comments and questions, which is, I'm sure we haven't. We've just run out of people's time. But Dan, I'm going to show you the promised picture.
All right.
After we just summarize, I think what we've been talking about is fit. So if you take anything away, please take away this whole concept of fit. It sounds easy, but we know now it's not easy. It's a hard subject to get your head around, even to the point, Subbu, that you were just talking about. That's a fit issue. If they're not going to be obvious, not going to be clear with you about the constraints you're dealing with, how can you actually execute well in that environment? So this is all about, it's all about fit. And anything, again, any comments you have that you didn't want to say in here, or anything that you'd like to share, books, articles, thoughts, please send them on to either Deirdre or me. Here it is, Dan.
Oh, yeah, Plum Island.
And you know this picture of the pink house.
I know it well. I always wonder, like, is there anybody in there?
No, it's not. It's not. I was telling the history of it. No. It's been condemned years ago. And the reason I have this is because they're raising money to keep it alive.
Oh,
and,
wow.
I think it's spectacular. But again, it's probably, this is local knowledge stuff that you probably go by this and you probably would never notice it's there unless you're local.
It's a beautiful sky, sunset. What a great scene.
It's very much the place, right? Once you get across that causeway.
Yeah, it makes you happy. Just like that picture, it makes you happy. I know I'm headed to the beach.